Welcome to the Injury Prevention Plus Safe Environment for Every Kid, or SEEK, QA program Wave 5 Action Period call number 2. Happy New Year. We are into January. Can't believe it. We want to thank our program partner, the Ohio Department of Health, the Violence and Injury Prevention Section, or VIPS. And the agenda for today, we want to welcome all of you. We'll hear around initial data review from Zainab, and then about child passenger safety for healthcare providers. And then from Dr. Lendrum, identifying unintentional injury risk among patients visiting a pediatric urgent care. And then if we have time, we'll go over next steps for the program. So this is the same information that I put in the chat. So welcome everybody. Thank you for joining. Please share your name and your practice name. And then what are you seeing within the last month? More patients for well visits or for sick visits? And then this is a disclaimer for all opinions expressed for the presentation shared today. And Zainab, I will stop sharing if you would like to share your slides.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, so first of all, I wanted to thank everyone for doing a great job at submitting their data for December and for baseline. I know we're still waiting on a few practices to submit some baseline data. We understand that it can be somewhat of, it can be a little bit difficult to try and go back and put that data in, but we really wanted to give you credit and give our program credit to and kind of see how we've improved quality care for your patients. And so we would really appreciate if you haven't submitted baseline data yet, for you to do that. And if you have any trouble or if you have any questions about that, please reach out to Brooke or I with any questions or any concerns. With that being said, I'm going to go straight into the data review. As you know, we are collecting data on 5 main topics: social needs, family needs, home safety, car seat safety, and safe sleep. And you'll find a slide for each of these as we go through them. Actually, let me just put this into it's sharing the other screen, so I'm sorry about that. But anyway, so here we wanted to know whether or not all the patients that are coming in are being asked all the social needs questions. So that's what screened means. And in terms of counseled, we want to know of the patients that indicated a need for any of the social needs, if the physician counseled on that or provided resources or whatnot. So in baseline, it was very up and down in terms of whether or not the patients were screened, but very few were counseled. But as we can see, as we enter the first QI month in December, all of the patients were asked all of the social needs questions, and then those that indicated a need for any of the social needs were also counseled on that. As we go through these slides, again, this is aggregate data. Individual level data or individual practice level data will be sent to each of you. We're just waiting on a few more practices to submit their baseline data, just so that your figures can look a little bit more complete like these do. We don't want to just send just December data to you, or if that's what you want, we can also send that. But it's just some information for you. And again, so family needs, whether or not the mom is struggling to care for her child, if the mom is struggling, or the primary caretaker is struggling with depression or is having some family issues at home, this is what the family needs topic asks about. And so again, 100% of the patients that took the screening were asked all of the family needs questions. And of those that indicated a need, of those that needed help or indicated that they needed help taking care of their child, or if they answered, if they had any negative answer to any of those questions, and if those were counseled, 100% of those patients, again, were counseled. As we go to home safety, these questions include whether or not all of the furniture is secured to the wall, if there's any like choking hazards for the baby, um, questions about whether or not the home environment is safe for the child are included in this topic. All of the patients that were given the survey answered all of the home safety questions. However, we do see about 98%, depending on the age group, were counseled on that or did not have a discussion if they indicated a need for home safety or within home safety. And again, as the data shows, everyone's doing super great in December. We're hoping to, I know it's very ambitious, but we are very positive that you guys can do it. We're really hoping to have these counseled rates at 100%, like how we did for social needs and family needs. In terms of car seat safety, this is again asked to both age groups. We want to know if the seat is installed properly, if it was checked by a nurse or a firefighter, whether or not the seat is backward facing, forward facing. All of the again patients that were given the survey answered all of the car seat safety questions. In terms of counseling or in terms of those that indicated a need for car seat safety, 87 or 92% were counseled. I do want to add that the resource sheet that we provide has some information on car seat safety. If you are giving those patients that indicate a need or indicate some sort of need for counseling in terms of car seat safety, and you do give them that resource, technically we still consider that as counseled. So if in December you did not have a verbal discussion with them, but you did give them our resource sheet, technically that still counts as you counseling them on those issues. So please keep that in mind when you're submitting data and to kind of give yourself credit for that. Safe sleep is only asked for the younger age group to see if they have their own a safe area to sleep, if the area is free of like stuffed animals or other stuff that could potentially be hazardous to the baby or the infant. Again, most of the practices were doing pretty well already at baseline in terms of asking whether or not the infant or the baby had a safe spot to sleep. In terms of counseling, that did dip a little bit, but is showing to have a great increase in December or in the first QI month. Again, as we said, the majority of these umbrella topics are seeing 100% counseled. So in terms of home safety and car seat safety, which are the only ones, we are really, we have faith that you guys could increase that to 100% and kind of keep in mind what I said about the resource sheet that we provide. But yeah, this is what the data is showing so far. Again, if you haven't submitted your data, we would really appreciate you submitting that. These baseline data points could potentially change because we're still waiting on a few practices to submit their data. But again, we are thankful for your time. And if no one has any questions, I can hand it back over to Brooke.
Thanks, Zainab. Yeah, you touch on some good points. Everyone will be armed with some additional child passenger safety resources today, so you'll be able to share those out. And we always want you to get the credit that you are due. So any conversation or resource share that is taking place within your practice, please count that as a win for you. Any questions for Zainab on the data? Okay, hearing none, no need to delay. So Heidi and Kirsten, I will roll it to you for your slides. Thanks, Zainab.
Okay, can everybody see it?
Looks good, thanks.
Awesome. Alrighty, hello everybody. Like Brooke said, we're here to talk to you guys about child passenger safety today. Heidi, do you want to go first?
Sure. My name's Heidi Dolan. I'm a child passenger safety technician and instructor up here in Northeast Ohio. I coordinate the child passenger safety efforts at UH Rainbow Babies and Children's Hospital. We're a level 1 trauma center. a level 4 NICU and a level 1 adult trauma center as well.
All right, my name is Kirsten Sora. I'm a car seat technician and instructor as well. I work at Columbus Public Health, and we are a health department, so we don't have any fancy levels for anything. But something that both Heidi and I do, we are regional coordinators for what is called the Ohio Buckles Buckeyes program. You can see our regions broken down on the screen. I'm in charge of the orange blob in the middle with 5, and Heidi is up at 6. So all those regions means that there are these car seat programs in all of those locations that you can get in touch with for your own resources and help. Anything to add for that, Heidi?
No, the OBB program has a select amount of seats available. There's an OBB coordinator in each one of those counties that can distribute seats to families in need. And we don't receive a lot of seats. We can put you in touch with someone in a specific county if you're looking for your contact.
Alrighty. How do you believe this one's you?
Oh, perfect. Sorry. So motor vehicle crashes are still the second leading cause of death for both children and teens. But we know that seatbelts work, and we know that they reduce the risk of death and injury. Especially, we see a huge decrease in fatal injury in infants and for toddlers. And it's because of the way the seat, a lot of reasons, because of the way the seat is shaped, and because most people put children in an infant seat and toddlers. We see a big increase in injury as they get older and they move out of these rear-facing seats. Next. Car seats work for a variety of reasons. So one, they're shaped to absorb the effects of the crash. Most importantly, a car seat keeps the child in the vehicle. We want that child to remain restrained in the car seat and the car seat restrained in the vehicle. That's their best chance of lesser injuries. The way the car seat's shaped, it protects the head, neck, and spine. We want their head, neck, and spine to be flat against the back of the seat so that those crash forces are spread across large portions of the body. And then most importantly, the harness is 5 points. So it holds the child at the shoulders and the hips, which are two of the strongest parts of the body. Next.
Okay, so these are just the basic stages of car seats. We want every child to stay in each stage as long as possible. Moving from one to the next really shouldn't be seen as like a big milestone or seen as like, oh, you know, you're like a big boy, girl, what have you. Because we do want each kiddo to stay in every stage. And since every child is different, some kids may stay in one longer than others. So the ones that you may be familiar with are so the youngest children, so babies which under the age of 1, they must be in a rear-facing seat. You do not turn them around to face the front, ever. They do need to be rear-facing because, like Heidi said, head, neck, and spine, and I'm sure you're all familiar with, babies have big heads, and so we want that support to be behind them. As they get a little bit older, to that toddler range of 1 to 3 or so years old, we still want them to rear-face. We want them to stay that direction until they hit the height or weight limit of the seat that they are using. And we'll show some crash test videos of exactly why we want that and how the injuries can change when we turn a child around to face the front. Again, as the kiddo gets bigger, they're now between 3 and 5 years old. We may now start looking at them turning forward facing if they've outgrown their rear facing seat. We still want them to be in a harnessed seat. We want them to be in that harness seat as long as possible until they outgrow that, either by height or weight as well. Then they move into booster. We see a lot of families sometimes skipping the booster stage, which is unfortunate, and we'll have another video of a crash test for that. But we want to make sure that they are using that booster seat until they are tall enough to use that vehicle seatbelt all by itself. And then we've got our preteens, which are like our 9 to 13-ish year olds. They're using that seatbelt, and we want them to be in the back seat until they're at least 13. I'm sure you're all familiar with how puberty changes the bone density and all kinds of other things in the human body. It's at that point where they're better with able to stand impact of an airbag in a crash. So we want them in the back seat until those types of changes start happening in the body. So the takeaway from this slide is we want them in each stage as long as we possibly can. And it's not based on age, it's based on like height and weight. All right, in Ohio, because we do get a lot of families asking about our laws, Ohio is what we call a proper use state. So that means that car seats must be used according to the car seat manufacturer. So if a car seat says that a child must rear face to at minimum 2 years old, it doesn't matter how much that child weighs if they meet the minimum weight to forward face. If they're not 2 years old yet, they still have to face the back. And our booster law says that a child needs to be in a booster seat until they are 4'9" or 57 inches or 8 years old. So we really like to push that 4'9" above the age because there's some pretty small 8-year-olds that aren't quite ready to be out of that booster seat yet. So we really want to make sure that they are tall enough to be out of that booster before they move out of it. So that might mean you got a 12-year-old in a booster still, and that might stink for the 12-year-old whose peers might be a bit bigger than them and don't have to use a booster anymore, but it's really about keeping them safe. All right, and these are the videos we were talking about. So these are just some crash tests. And you can see that it's the same doll, it's the same seat, they've been installed properly. But you can see in the rear facing video that you hardly see that child at all. They are supported throughout the entire ride, and their head and neck are cradled and kept in line with one another. Where in the forward facing video, that child's head and neck are thrown forward with some force, and there's that higher potential for injury. Okay, for a second I thought that video wasn't gonna load. So this is why we want to keep kiddos and boosters longer. So this is a 6-year-old dummy in a computer simulated crash. The car is going 35 miles an hour, and it's showing the type of injuries that could possibly happen without that booster seat. You can see in that bottom image that child is not in that booster seat. They are sliding actually underneath that seatbelt, which could be called submarining, and there could be potentially devastating injuries from that. So I'm going to replay that just because it is so quick, or I'm not going to replay it and it's going to jump ahead a bunch of slides. But you can kind of see why we do want to make sure that kiddos are in that booster, that families are not skipping that stage, or they're not taking kiddos out too early just because they have now hit 8 years old, because kiddos don't always sit properly, adults don't always sit properly either, but these types of injuries can be very serious and potentially fatal.
Coming from a pediatric trauma center, that's one of the #1 injuries we see is children that are not restrained past 4 years old, or not using booster seats, or not using the correct booster seat, or tucking the seatbelt behind their back. It's really important that we're coaching and counseling parents that they really need to be in the booster seats, that seatbelt fits them properly. So 5 steps to car seat use. This is what we teach our new technicians when we instruct classes. Selection, direction, location, harnessing, and installation, which we're going to go over each one real quick. Next. We always tell parents we want them to use the car seat that they're going to use correctly every single time, that fits the vehicle and fits the child and fits their budget. A lot of people will call and ask, hey, what's the best seat out there? And one of the first questions we ask is, what car are you driving? How many other passengers are in the car? And what's your budget? And then the stats of that kiddo as well. It's really important to have all the facts when selecting a car seat. Next. Direction. Kristen talked about rear facing until at least 2. We really want kids rear facing for as long as possible, even past 2. They are so much safer rear facing because it cradles that head, neck, and spine. But looking at car seats forward facing versus rear, we want you to look at the age of the child, the height and weight, and the developmental needs. In some cases, keeping a child rear facing longer is much better, especially if they have developmental needs, or if they have poor head control or poor muscle tone. There are seats out there that can rear face up to 50 pounds now, just for that very reason. Next. So location is super important, and we get this question again all the time. Where should I put the car seat? And it's not as easy as saying, oh, we're just going to put it in the center. You have to think about a few things. Airbag location. We never want a rear-facing seat in the front seat ever. It would be fatal for an airbag to hit a rear-facing car seat. Spacing. Is it going to fit on the seat? Is it going to be too wide or too high? Is it going to interfere with the headrest? Hardware. Do you have the correct hardware, and does your seatbelt work? We come across a lot of non-working seatbelts. I'm working with the underserved. We need to make sure that they have a locking seatbelt, or if there's lower anchors and tethers present. And then also knowing who else is traveling in that car is a really important piece of the puzzle. It's not as simple as saying, yes, we're going to put this child in a spot when you might have a booster rider and maybe a forward-facing harnessed rider as well, or maybe other adults that travel on the back seat. So all those factors come into play when we talk about location. Next. Harnessing is so important. And I know when parents come to our fitting stations, we teach them everything from installation and even selection, especially harnessing. There's two different kinds of seats on the market. There's a no rethread and a rethread. A no rethread means that the shoulder straps adjust by the headrest at the top of the seat. You can see in that first picture where it says no rethread. Makes it a little easier for parents to adjust raising and lowering that headrest. The rethread means that the parent has to physically take the harness off the splitter plate on the back of the seat and then reroute those straps through those little yellow colors there on the thing. Thank you, Kirsten. No difference in safety between those seats. That's just how they're made. Now, when we talk about harnessing, rear facing, we want those straps at or below the shoulders. It helps the car seat function when there is a crash. When that harness is at or below, it actually pushes the baby down and against the back of the seat to keep them fully contained in the seat. Now, when they go forward facing, we want those straps at or above their shoulders because we need them to have just a little bit of movement in that crash. But it's really important that parents pay attention to where that harness height is and know when to move it up and down. And then lastly, making it snug. We call it the pinch test. So you can see in that last picture on the right where it says make it snug, the parent can actually pinch the fabric in their fingers. That means the harness is too loose. They need to pull that harness tight until their finger slides across that webbing. It's a great tip to teach parents on harnessing. It's really super easy. Even if they come in for a visit, you'd be able to see that the harness is too loose. Very simple thing to teach, and it can make a really big difference in how that seat performs in a crash. Next. An installation. So we really encourage parents to look at the car seat manual and the vehicle manual if necessary. Going back to location, sometimes we have to go to that vehicle guide to see where is best suited for that car, maybe where all the latch positions are or tether locations, and see if there's any other rules that might prevent us from installing that seat. We want parents to use either the seatbelt or lower anchors, not both. They actually work against each other in a crash. Who knew, right? But we see a lot of parents coming in with both, thinking that it's safer. It has to pass the inch test. We don't want the seat to move more than an inch of the belt path. So if you look where that the lady's hands are, that seatbelt is coming through the forward-facing belt path. That's where you check for tightness. You don't shake it at the front or you shake it at the top. You're looking at the belt path for that inch test. And then using the top tether when needed, which we'll talk about here in a second.
Help if I unmuted myself. So we've mentioned what we call the latch system several times now. So we're just going to very, very briefly touch on that for you. And this is just an alternative way to install the car seat. So like Heidi said, we do not use the seatbelt and the lower anchors together. I saw something once that I liked where they were compared to glasses and contacts. They both work great separately by themselves, but you don't use them together because it's too much. So our lower anchors would attach at the bottom of the seat base. Sometimes they're super easy to see. Sometimes you got to feel around for them in the crease of the seat. They're going to be marked if you can't see them easily. And then the tether is up at the top. You may or may not have seen this in your own vehicles and just not known what it was, but this is to help prevent extra head movement, which I got a little ahead of myself, so I apologize. So those lower anchors, they're found in that seat bite. We use it instead of the seat belt to install a seat. And one really important thing that I think more caregivers are aware of now, but still a misuse that we see, is that they have weight limits. They can only be used until the child is a certain weight, and then the car seat must be installed with the seatbelt past that point. Car seat manufacturers have done a lot of testing to figure out what that weight limit is. So they know exactly when those lower anchors are no longer functional past that weight to a safe degree. And so we just want to make sure that we are always letting families know. And once a child gets close to a certain weight, we want to make sure we're checking those stickers on the car seats to see what those weight limits are. And that information will be on the stickers on the side of the car seats. If for some reason those stickers are missing, check the manual. You can always call the manufacturer as well. The tether anchor, so that's the part that comes off the back of the top of the car seat, is super important. We want to make sure we use that whenever a harnessed seat is forward facing, because that limits that head movement in the event of a crash by up to 6 inches. And that can mean the difference between a head strike and not, with the seat in front of it. So we really want to make sure that we are finding where that is, which can be a bit difficult. As you can see in this picture, vehicles can pretty much put them wherever they want. They've gotten a bit better in recent years about making these easier to find and more accessible. Some of them are still games of hide and seek. We actually have about an inch thick book specifically for lower anchors and tethers to help us find where everything is. So if you ever have a family that's having issues with that, you can always have them contact a car seat technician and they can help them find that. Whenever possible, you should be using that tether again to prevent that forward head movement. Alrighty, so this is just something, this is certainly not all encompassing, but if you have a family come in and you want to at least start addressing car seats, because we know you're not all trained or trained at all in car seats, you're trained in so many other things, but we are, so if you just want to even broach the topic, ask them if they even have a car seat. We unfortunately still see a lot of families coming into appointments without a seat, or they'll come in to get a seat for the baby that they're expecting, and we'll see older sibling who might be 2 or 3 years old bopping around in the back seat and nothing. So ask if they have car seats for all of the children. If they have a car seat, is it regulated, which we'll get into in a few slides? Is it height and weight and developmental level appropriate? And then all of these green little diamonds at the end ask you all to always refer to a certified car seat technician. Again, we understand you may have some base knowledge on car seats, but we are the experts. We've been trained. We have gone through all the training, the CEUs, the recertifications. So we just want to make sure they're getting the most updated information, the correct information. So this is just a means of starting that conversation and then getting them connected with somebody who can then further that education and ensure the child is as safe as possible while in the car. All right. Heidi?
Counterfeit seats. So we're lucky here that we have both a children's hospital and a birthing hospital connected. And we are seeing an influx of counterfeit seats. All the pretty ones you see on the right are actually all counterfeit. They meet no federal regulations whatsoever, meaning they're not tested to be used in the US, they're not manufactured to be used in the US, they have no labeling, etc. We've actually had 2 this week and it's only Wednesday, which is insane. People are buying seats on Temu, Wish, and AliExpress. If they're buying on those 3 sites, they're fake. They sell no real car seats on those 3 sites. But they're also picking them up off of Marketplace, not knowing that they're counterfeit. We really counsel parents if they're using a used seat to make sure they know the history, check the labels, etc. These seats are not tested to US standards and can be very dangerous. We're going to show you a video of how one splinters apart in a crash. Next. So there are other seats on the market. There are seats that are available in different countries, and these are just some examples of what the labels are. But what we've seen is the orange label, which is a European label, we're actually seeing partial European labels on counterfeit seats. And I say partial because sometimes it only has the very top part where it goes up to universal. Other times it has the E4 with the numbers below it, but it's missing the entire label, and it has to have that entire thing in order for it to be a European seat. When we first started seeing counterfeit seats, we were really, I'll be honest, we were confused because they looked kind of like European seats. The biggest difference is EU seats do not have to have a chest clip. They're tested differently, and counterfeit seats, none of them have chest clips. But if you want to know if a car seat can be used in the US, you need to look to make sure it says that it can be used in the US and that it passes FMVSS 213, and that's part of the labeling process on US seats. Next. So the one we keep seeing is this one. Everyone covets the Doona because it's the, excuse me, it's a stroller that folds down into a car seat. So it's super easy to get in on the car. I'll be honest, the Doona retails for $500. It very, very rarely goes on sale. And if they do find it on sale, they're probably buying a fake one or a used one. If you look at this picture, the one on the right is real, and the one on the left is real, excuse me. The one on the right is the copycat or the dupe. They look pretty similar just from looking at it. The differences in the plastic, in the metal, in the harnessing. If you look at the very bottom of this copycat one, it says 4-in-1 car seat. That's a dead giveaway that it is actually a counterfeit seat. And we are seeing these, we're probably seeing about one of these a week on our birthing floor, which is terrifying. Next.
So signs that you might have a non-compliant or counterfeit seat. Heidi touched on these a little bit, but the harness. So US compliant seats, we have to have a 5-point harness. And so that means theirs goes over each shoulder, over each hip, and then in between the legs. Our counterfeit seat, which this is the one that we've confiscated ourselves, and I know Heidi, you guys have seen this one as well. It is only a 3-point harness. So that means it just goes over each shoulder and then connects between the legs. So that's a pretty big giveaway right there. And then you can also see the thickness of the straps. These on a regulated seat are a certain width wide, and while these on a counterfeit seat are closer to what you might see on like a high chair or in a stroller. So certainly not the same material and not to the same regulations. Heidi mentioned the chest clip. US seats almost always have that chest clip. Most counterfeits do not, as well as non-compliant seats. And then labels. I know that counterfeit car seat makers are going to greater lengths to make theirs look believable, which is awful of them. But they will put those partial fake labels on there. But there are ones that are required in the US that have to be on there that list things like manufacturing name, the date it was made, the height and weight limits, the lower anchor weight limits. They will have their brand name on there somewhere. And in this particular seat that we confiscated, it's not grammatically correct on several of the labels either. So just make sure that you're keeping an eye. If it's not abundantly clear from the other components, to take a peek at those labels to see what it says. All right, and this is that video of the copycat Doona that Heidi was talking about. So I do have to fast forward just a little bit because it was actually a news story that they did. So this is the fake, and you can see that there are just parts flying off of it. It is just falling apart throughout the crash. And then you can see the authentic one right here is reacting as how it should. So the copycat, while they've gone to great lengths to make it look the same, completely falls apart, is extremely dangerous in the event of a crash. While the Doona, of course, has gone through all of the safety standards and has met those. So that's why even when families, like we might find them, sometimes we'll see them walking through our lobby and we'll try and chase after them and catch them. Like, oh no, it's fine. And they're like, but it's not. And we'll try and show them something like this to be like, explain why, because it does look like a credible car seat because they have gone to great lengths to make it look like one, even though it is not. There are also other types of counterfeit seats, and travel vests aren't, I think, as common. This is an alternative for older kiddos in that back seat, but there is, of course, now counterfeits for this as well. And you can see that, I'll just let you watch the video. So clearly that didn't really do anything. That was a fake travel vest. It clearly did not hold the child back. They were immediately thrown forward, and likely, at least in this example, it looks like they might have even gone potentially up through the between the seats, potentially out of a window. So we really want to make sure that when families, especially when they are online looking at car seats or travel vests, depending on the needs of their child, that they are finding credible ones. And if they ever have questions or not, again, please try and refer them to a car seat technician, because we can help steer them in the right direction to make sure that they're getting something that's safe. Heidi, this one's you.
Yep. Just some things to consider. We all know that bulky coats shouldn't be underneath the harness, because remember, the harness, the coat has to compress in order for that harness to work properly. It is super dangerous to wear like a huge puffer coat in the car. So we really encourage parents to use something that's a little bit less puffy, maybe a fleece, cover them with a blanket, warm the car ahead of time, etc. But it's really, really important that they see that. And when a parent asks, well, how do I know? It sounds complicated, but put the child in the car with the coat on, harness them correctly so there's no pinch at the shoulders, and then take them out of the harness without moving it and take their coat off and put them back in. Look at the difference in the harness between the chest plate, the chest clip, and the child's body. That's how much the harness would have to move to protect them in a crash. It can make a huge difference. And then heat strokes. Heat stroke is still one of the leading causes of non-crash related fatalities among children. These are still happening all over the US. This is when a child is left unknowingly in the vehicle, or a child has gotten into a car and they can't figure out how to get back out. I always tell parents that, God forbid if a child goes missing, check all the cars in the area. If you really think about it, cars look fun. They have lights and blinkers and things that move and radios and lights and all those kind of things. But if a child gets in a car, sometimes they don't know how to get back out. Always check to make sure there's children have been taken out of the car. Put something in the back seat to remember to look in the back. We call look before you lock. Put your purse back there, or your phone so you're not using it while you're driving, or something really important. Statistics point to kids who are rear facing are left in cars more often than not because you can't see the child. You can see the seat, but not the child. Still happening across the US. I meant to look up how many occurred in 2023, but I forgot. I want to say it was around 30 kids died in the backseat of cars that were left. So consistent messaging. We want kids 0 to 2 rear facing, and we need them to be at a 45-degree angle. So following the directions on the side of the seat or the instruction manual, especially for those the little babies, we need them at a 45-degree angle so it keeps their airway open. 2 to 4 years old, they could still be rear facing or forward facing as long as they're in a 5-point harness. Once they reach the age of 4, it's very common, at least in our area, to see kids jump from that 5-point harness to a booster, and that's not always what we want to see. Keep them on that 5-point harness until they've outgrown it. It's so much more important. It's very rare that we see a 4-year-old that fits in a booster seat properly or that can sit still. I don't know many 4-year-olds that can sit still while they're traveling in a car with just a belt. 7 to 10, we really want to see kids still in booster seats. It's very rare that a child who is 8 years of age can sit in a seat belt. It reaches too high in their neck and it crosses their abdomen versus their hip bones. We need it to be across the boniest, the seat belt across the boniest part of the chest and the lap belt across their hip bones, the 2 strongest parts of the body. Very rare that we see that kind of fit with a child who's 8. Kids 10 through 13, we still want them in the back seat because of the airbag. An airbag deploys at 200 to 270 miles an hour. When a child is sitting in the front seat, if you think about it, an airbag is designed to cushion an adult in the chest and neck region. If a child is sitting in that front seat, that airbag is going to deploy and hit them more than likely in the face. A lot of times those injuries are not recoverable from. And we still want kids, if they can, sit in the front seat with a seatbelt, making sure they're past that age of 13, knowing that the back seat is always safe. And as kids are approaching that preteen, which we're finding, really talk about keeping that seatbelt on, whether they're in the front seat or the back seat, and making sure every single person buckles up in the car every single time, including the driver. It's an important question to ask.
Okay, that's everything that we had today. Certainly appreciate your time. The last slide in this, and I believe Brooke is sharing it out, is a bunch of resources that you can scan and find. I highlighted the two in the middle in yellow because it is find a CPST near you. So that is hopefully so that you can scan that, enter a zip code, and it'll come up with a list of car seat technicians in the area. So again, I know you might not be trained, and that's perfectly fine. You've got a lot of other stuff going on. This is our jobs. But please always refer a family or a client to a certified CPST for any and all car seat questions. I know we gave you some information today, and that's a good baseline, but it gets complicated quick. So please always refer them to one of us. And then how to identify counterfeit seats as well. The rest is just some other information on the regulations, both for vehicles and car seats, some articles on the importance of car seats, and all of that kind of fun stuff.
Thank you both so much for this very robust information. I learned something every time I hear you guys speak. I will toss it to the group for any questions.
Thanks for the presentation. One question I had, so I feel like commonly one thing I hear in clinic for children that are less than 2 years old is parents will say like, I've switched over to the forward-facing car seat because my child has outgrown the rear-facing car seat. And is there any specific like messaging you use in that case? Because I get that quite a bit.
Yes, I will say that if they've outgrown the infant carrier, which is I'm assuming what you mean, when they go to a convertible seats are that for a reason. They're convertible because they go both rear facing and forward facing. So on the side of that seat, the labels will tell them what that seat can rear face to. Most are between 5 pounds and 50 pounds. So somewhere in that frame. So they still could be rear facing. And to go back to what Kirsten said, we're a proper use state. So the seat has to be used the way the labels say on the side. So most seats on the market say rear facing until 2. I would just caution them that the child is so much safer rear facing. It really protects that head, neck, and spine as they fully develop.
I would also say we do get a lot of families who say the child has outgrown the harness when really they just haven't figured out how to adjust the harness. So it's possible that it's just them not understanding how to make it bigger to fit the child. There are also some kiddos who have long legs. So they haven't outgrown it height-wise. They still have that proper space above their head, but they've got long legs and it's hitting the back of the seat. It's a common concern that they might get leg injuries when they're so long. We're really more concerned about that head, neck, and spine, keeping that all safe and protected. Leg injuries are super rare when they face the back. But if they do happen, they're often less severe and they heal better than anything that might happen to head or neck injuries. So that might just be another thing like, yep, those are great points, but also always refer them to, again, a CPST so they can determine like, oh, are you just not adjusting the harness right? Did they really outgrow it? Like, it can be a whole host of things where it's like the family might not quite understand their seat.
Thank you. Any other questions from the group? Okay, hearing none, we have your contact information, so I will relay anything that we hear. I appreciate both of you for your time today and the good information. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
And Dr. Lundrum, I can share your slides or you are welcome to share yours. I think we have time for the highlights for your presentation.
Awesome. Yeah, I can share my slides.
Thanks.
Okay, can everyone see them? Okay, perfect. Hello, everyone. My name is Liz Lundrum. I am a part of the Ohio AAP injury prevention team, and then I am also a pediatric emergency medicine fellow at Cincinnati Children's. So I am sharing some research that was done within the last few years that used the unintentional injury risk questions from the SEEK screener in a pediatric urgent care to try to identify risks to help with counseling and intervention. And so I'm going to share the results of that. I have no disclosures. And as we know, unintentional injury, it's one of the leading causes of death and disability in the US for children that are greater than 1 year old. Prior studies have shown that the risk of unintentional injury is particularly high among families of lower socioeconomic status. And routine screening for unintentional injury risk typically occurs in the outpatient setting with an average of about 2 risks per family screened. And there's really limited data that exists assessing the risk of children presenting to an urgent care setting. So that was the objective of this particular study, was to determine the unintentional injury risks that were reported by families of children ages 1 through 5 years presenting to an urban pediatric urgent care, and just determine any associations between injury risks and sociodemographic characteristics. So this was a cross-sectional single center study. It took place at an urgent care adjacent to a tertiary care emergency department. The urgent care sees lower acuity patients, so triage level 4 and 5. And then participants in the study included guardians of urgent care patients that were 18 years or older. They lived with the patient the majority of the week, were English speaking, and were able to read the survey. And then we utilized the validated SEEK screening tool to assess unintentional injury risk. Some of those like broad tool domains that you guys are familiar with include home safety, child passenger safety, first aid training, and then participants did receive resources, so such as information on firearm safety and where you can get your car seats checked by a professional. In terms of outcomes of this particular study, so our primary outcome was the number of positive responses to unintentional injury risk questions. And then we assessed the sociodemographic characteristics of race, ethnicity, payer, and then neighborhood deprivation index, which this is calculated from census tract level socioeconomic measures that are linked to a child's geocoded address. And the index ranges from 0 to 1, with higher indicating more deprivation. So this was a convenience sample that was recruited between September of 2021 and February of 2022. The survey was administered via tablet, and then you can see some of our statistical analyses that we used there as well. In terms of results, so we had a total of 273 eligible families that completed the survey. And the majority were biological mothers at 86%. About half were non-Hispanic Black guardians. The majority of families either had public insurance or self-pay at 81%. And then our average neighborhood deprivation index was 0.41. This graph demonstrates the total number of injury risks that were reported per guardian. And we found that nearly all participants, 93%, reported at least 1 injury risk. And then over half of participants reported 3 or more unintentional injury risks. And then this chart demonstrates the breakdown of unintentional injury risk by some of the domains that we looked at. So child passenger safety concerns were amongst the highest reported injury risks, specifically a car seat not checked or installed by a professional. And then also a lack of guardian first aid training was also reported in approximately half of guardians. Home safety concerns were also a concern. Specifically, unsecured furniture was reported by 37% of guardians. And then gun safety concerns, such as unlocked or loaded guns, were reported in about 6% of respondents. In terms of some of those predictors that we assessed for, there was no significant association between unintentional injury risk and race, ethnicity, payer, neighborhood deprivation index. So just really important for all of the patients that we're seeing in urgent care. And what we found was that the unintentional injury risks were high among young patients in urgent care, with most guardians reporting multiple risks. And then based on kind of the literature at the time, urgent care had, we were seeing more unintentional injury risk than what were previously being reported in primary care offices as well. Some of the limitations of the study. So the questions we used at the time were only validated in the English language. So we probably definitely missed a subset of the population who was low English proficiency or did not speak English. And then social desirability bias may have affected our survey respondents' answers on the questions. And then this was a single center study, so the limitation of generalizability as well. But in conclusion, unintentional injury risks are definitely high among young patients who present to urgent care, and we feel that routine screening in the setting may be warranted, and risk identification may guide equitable responses, including things like targeted counseling or tailored resource provision. Some of the next steps for this particular research include provider education. So we're starting to get urgent care providers educated on the screening tool, and then eventually the development of some targeted resources that we can use in the urgent care setting. And here are some acknowledgements and resources. And does anyone have any questions?
Dr. Lundrum, thank you so much. I had a question, if I can maybe start it for the group. Do we have any information on reasons we would see more unintentional injuries come up, or the discussion in the urgent care versus primary care?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. We didn't look at this specifically, but one thing that we kind of postulated was that, you know, potentially urgent care is an area where sometimes families utilize as something other than like a primary care setting, like when they don't have regular primary care. So it's possible that you're seeing families who are socioeconomically in need of resources, but just don't have the means to see someone in primary care. But we didn't actually study that, so I can't answer that for sure.
Any thoughts or other questions or insights from the primary care providers on the call? I found your data point interesting on, we find an average of 3 to 4 areas of need per screening tool per visit. I think that has been the average across waves, and then we found that to be the case last time. I don't know, Zainab, if you have any interesting thoughts there, but that seems to align depending on the setting.
Gotcha.
Okay, quiet group today. If anyone thinks of anything in terms of the study, Dr. Lundrum's good work that supports the work that we are doing in primary care, please share, and I can liaise those questions. Happy to do so. We do have time for next steps. Let me get back to the slides here. Maybe. Okay, thank you for your patience. Okay, so please continue to use the Seek screening tool and the caregiver feedback survey in your practice using the iPads. If you have any questions on that, I am an email away, of course. Start thinking about drafting your first PDSA worksheet. We will go over these in January at the practice coaching call, as well as your individual data review with Zainab. And then the next action period call for Seek is Wednesday, February 14th. We'll have a Valentine's Day call. And again, all of these calls are recorded for viewing on demand and posted to the Seek resource website. I will be sending out additional resources from today's call, as well as other good items in the check-in email for this week. And any questions for anyone from the group before we go? Okay, hearing none, I appreciate all of you for joining today and look forward to talking with you in the future. Have a lovely end of the week. Thanks so much.